When we write survey questions, we need to think about the cognitive response process. This is simply the mental path a person takes before they give us an answer. It isn't always a straight line. Sometimes people jump directly from reading to a question to answering it, and they use every visual cue on the screen to decide what to do. Here's how you can help your respondents through each of the 4 stages. So the first stage is comprehension. Here, the goal is simple: make it easy to read. You want to ensure that what you intended to ask is exactly what the respondent understands. If they have to reread a question 3 times just to figure out what you're looking for, they are much more likely to give up or provide an inaccurate answer. By keeping your language clear and your definitions simple, you remove the mental hurdles that stand between the respondent and a high-quality answer. So 3 tips for comprehension are: keep it simple, aim for a middle school reading level and avoid technical jargon. Keep it to one topic at a time, so avoiding double-barreled questions that ask more than one thing. And be concise, use fewer words, and assume your audience will not read long instructions. Next is retrieval. The goal here is respecting memory. When we ask a question, we are asking the respondent to dig through their brain for a specific answer. But humans are hard drives. We tend to forget the tiny details of everyday tasks and mostly remember general feelings. If you turn your survey into a high-stakes memory test, respondents will get frustrated and start guessing. By underestimating what people can realistically remember and using broader categories like frequently or rarely, you make it easier for them to give you honest, accurate data without the mental strain. And the third is judgment. Here, the goal is avoiding bias. It's important to remember that respondents are human. They naturally look for patterns and try to guess your intentions or what the right answer might be. This can accidentally skew your data before they even click a button. By asking your broad questions first and avoid leading yes or no phrasing, you prevent respondents from being primed to answer a certain way. Our goal is to create a neutral environment where the respondent feels comfortable giving their honest opinion rather than the one they think you want to hear. The 4th and final stage is reporting. Our goal here is mapping the answer. This is the moment where the respondent takes their internal feelings and tries to find where it fits among the options you've provided. To make this seamless, you should use words instead of just numbers, or you need to label the numbers. So that 1 to 5 scale, as an example, the respondent does have to stop and wonder, is 4 good or is it just okay? So looking at changing that to maybe a scale for confidence or very satisfied to very dissatisfied, you're taking the guesswork out of it. Couple this with visual simplicity, a clean design without distractions, so they can instantly see where their options belong. When mapping is easy, your data becomes much more precise. So here we have an example of a bad question on the left and how we can turn this into 2 bad questions on the right. So as mentioned under comprehension, you want to focus on one concept at a time. So double-barreled questions include multiple concepts where a respondent cannot provide a fair assessment. Additionally, we've also included in the bad question an example of a rating scale that is a little bit harder to interpret compared to the label scale. Use mutually exclusive and exhaustive options so there's no confusion on which answer to pick. If I spend 3 hours a week writing emails, do I choose 1 to 3 or that 3 to 6 option? We also want to give our respondents a way out. How would I answer this question if I didn't write any emails at all? If this is a required question, the respondent could exit out of the survey or provide an incorrect answer. Providing an out to your respondents with an option such as other, never, not applicable, or none of the above will give you more insightful data. So the bad is a pretty extreme bad example here, but it actually happens often enough that we need to call it out. The idea here is just to ensure that you are balancing both sides of the response scale to mitigate skewing your data. The number of answer options will often be dependent on your research goal. Typically, we most often see the use of 5-point Likert scales. No matter the scale you choose, though, try to keep your answer options consistent. Keeping the number consistent is not only helpful for your respondents, but also easier for the survey owner to analyze the results and compare. If you can't explain to a respondent what the difference is between 2 points on a scale is, it does mean that you have too many points. SurveyMonkey in the platform, we do offer a sliding scale question type, but we wouldn't really recommend using this often. The default is 100 points, and respondents would be unlikely to know what the difference between a rating of, say, 91 and 92 is. We mentioned how a question order can bias respondents, so can question options. When it makes sense, SurveyMonkey has an option to randomize your answer options as well to help mitigate this bias in your data so that the list presented will be different for each respondent. Most questions will have selections in the edit or options that will be useful for your questions. The other answer choice is typically what we recommend in order to analyze these responses easily. The none of the above is an exclusive choice, so in adding this in a checkbox question type, we'll unselect all the other selected options from the question if checked. But if these options are anchored to the bottom, both of these options are anchored to the bottom of the answer choices, regardless of the other options such as randomize or alphabetize. Remember to ensure that your questions should be required where needed. There's an option on the page level to require all questions. It makes it really easy, but if you are incorporating a matrix question type into your survey, you would still need to ensure that you have the all is selected when you're having more than one row in that matrix question. So the flow of your survey is important. You really want to think of it as that conversation. So just like a real conversation, you want to keep it focused to maintain a high completion rate, to keep the survey as short as possible while still getting the data you need. We know from our own survey research team that completion rates will drop significantly as the number of questions increase. So every question needs to earn its spot. The structure should move from general to specific questions. I recommend including page breaks after about every 5 questions or so. This helps you group your topics together and make the experience feel manageable for the respondent. As an added technical bonus, that SurveyMonkey will actually save the progress every time you click to the next page. So if you're capturing partial responses, that would be the way to do that. You also want to be careful about, the vibe of the conversation. Jumping into personal or sensitive questions right away could be very off-putting. So it's better rule of thumb to save those for later in the survey once you've established that rapport. Transparency is key here. Be open and honest about why you're asking for certain information and how it will be used. For sensitive topics, consider making the questions optional or providing additional resources. And finally, always prioritize inclusion and accessibility. You want to use inclusive language, and you should never assume or define what is normal for our respondents.